Welcome. My name's Michelle. I'm the festival director, and this is our penultimate event. We just have Simon Armitage tonight after this one. But this is lovely to see so many people here, especially as it's our 20th anniversary this year. So we are collecting 20p's for 20 years. We do have a bucket. If you have any 20p's in your pocket, we will accept £20 notes or notes. So I'm really delighted to be here to introduce Val McDermid. She came to our festival in the autumn of 2021 after we'd been in lockdown in the March. And so we were all socially distanced, and it was a very different event. So it's great to welcome her back today. A couple of housekeeping notes. If you could turn your phones to silent. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if you do hear one, there will be a gentleman in a yellow jacket coming out who you should follow to the exit. I've been asked to say a big thank you to Mark and Mel. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Kirklees College for sponsoring this event. And that's basically it. I've mentioned our 20th. That was the whole list of things I need to mention. So I'm going to get off the stage, and we have Helen Scott is going to interview Val today. So if you could give a huge welcome to Val McDermid.
And I should say that we're here this afternoon to celebrate the publication in softback of the latest Karen Pirie novel. We have some at the back. It's published on June the 4th. I've had the pleasure of being able to read it in hardback. So we're going to use that as a starting point, but there are all sorts of other things to discuss as well. But Karen Pirie hit television the last couple of years, ITV, and I have to say, when I saw the lead actress, I thought, that's not my Karen Pirie.
Not my Karen Pirie either. She doesn't look like the Karen Pirie in my head at all.
That's what I was going to ask you. So tell me about that. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen the ITV version, she is younger than I think my Karen Pirie is, and she's got a very sharply tailored blonde bob, and quite nattily dressed, and yeah. So
she's older than you think. She's actually in her 30s. She just looks young.
Okay.
But no, she's not the image in my head at all. But in a way, when you're casting for television, what you're looking for is someone who can embody the character, someone who can bring that personality to the screen. And there's no question about that. Lauren does embody the spirit of Karen Pirie, and she's got many of the qualities that Karen has. She's Scottish for a start, which was incredibly motivating. Don't laugh. There are a number of times that Scottish people end up not being Scottish on television. It's remarkable. Yeah. But one of the things that we were quite strict about with the television company was that not just there should be Scottish accents, but they should be the right Scottish accents. I mean, you may well have seen Shetland. Because nobody on Shetland has an accent that comes anywhere near a Shetland accent. So we were quite keen that there should be actors who could do an East Coast accent. So I would not be sitting there going, she wouldn't say that. But Lauren Wildwood-Glaser does a great job, I think. And right at the beginning, we sat down and talked about casting. We talked about the essential qualities of Karen and the essential qualities of the kind of storytelling that we're now. And that was what was at the front of our minds, was somebody who could convey that.
I think it's quite interesting because actually if you read the novels, you don't get to know that much about her. So here's what I know about her. She loves coffee. She's anti-authority. She's sparky. She's very quick-witted. A lot of it is written in dialogue, so there's not a lot of extraneous narrative. Though she has a love life. Bit peripheral. You're going to tell me it's not, although it obviously has informed her career in the police service. But you don't know what she looks like.
I think I talk about her a few times as being sort of being a bit overweight and having bad hair.
So tell us who your Karen Pirie is.
Well, my Karen Pirie is hard to think of an actor really who's embodies her, but I'm happy with what we've done with the television, but she doesn't look like Karen Pirie in my head, who's still the one in my head.
Yes.
When we did Blood and Blood, Robson Green looked very like Tony Hill in my head, so I had no issues around that, but nobody else in the cast looked like the person in my head.
Yes.
You have to kind of build a Chinese wall and say, these are the books, this is the television,
Yeah.
and these are the key elements of the books, and these have to be in television. But
Yeah.
other than that, go away and make the best programme you can.
Yeah, because you have been involved with screenwriting a bit in the past, haven't you? But this time, not? Were you an advisor or?
I've never written the scripts, but I've always been involved in the process.
Yeah.
So with Blood and Blood, I've read every script. This I read every script. With Traces, I did the outlines and worked with the team on the scripts.
Yeah.
But I've never actually written TV scripts because I don't see things the way that TV script writers do. I've tried to write script, but I can't do it. It doesn't work for me. Because what takes me 5 pages to describe, you can do it in one shot.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing. And I don't see the world that way. It's really weird. I can do radio drama, I can do theatre,
Yeah.
but I just can't do television and film. But there are other people, fortunately, who can do it very well. So I'll leave it up to them.
So are we going to have more Karen Pirie?
Yeah, we've currently got Series 3 in development.
Right.
So that will probably be on your screens early next year. It takes forever.
Oh yes, I come from that world. It does take forever.
And then everybody involved in the television production's got to weigh in with their tuppence worth.
Yeah.
I liken script writing, the process of being a script writer, being a bit like a lamppost that dogs use. Everybody's got an opinion.
Yes. Yes, including the people who are buying it.
Yes.
And is it going to be the third in the Karen Pirie series? They're going to work chronologically through.
Yes, it will be Skeleton Road.
Yes.
I've already had assurances that we will indeed film some of it in former Yugoslavia.
Wow.
So we'll actually go on location, and this time will be the right location, because the previous one was partly set in Italy, but because they already had a crew, this is how television works, they already had a crew on site in Malta, so we'll just film it and it looks a bit like Italy. Hopefully that's not going to happen this time.
So it's all about the cost effectiveness of. Yeah.
And there's always these bits that don't quite work, because in the very first one, the Distant Echo, there's one scene where a guy is going out for a run before dinner and he leaves his house in St Andrews, and the next scene is him in St Monans, which is 20 miles away, falling down dead after he's hit by a car. It's some run.
I don't really know that.
Well, the first I knew, but I have a cottage in St Monans, and the first I knew that this was happening was everybody said, "Are you going to be there on Tuesday when they're filming?" What was that? Doing on Tuesday when they're filming? So, writer's always the last to know.
Yeah. So most of your heroines have been a la Karen Pirie, sparky, feisty women.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you're at home writing for?
I think it's probably, I wanted to write strong women from the beginning. I think when I started writing, there were not many crime novels that had strong women characters. When they had female characters, it was someone like Miss Marple, who was like, very good at what she did, but not really up to getting in there face to face with the bad guys. And I thought it was about time that we had female characters with a brain and a sense of humour that did their own heavy lifting. So that's always kind of been at the front of my thought processes. And it's kind of, you always have to set them against somebody who's not like them. So they have colleagues or friends who are not like them.
Yes.
So you've got that contrast. It wouldn't do if it was just a bunch of feminist thugs going about the place. That wouldn't make for very good books. But so for every Carol Jordan there's a Tony Hill.
Yes.
For every Karen Pirie there's a Jason Money.
Yes.
And these characters take on a different role in relation to the characters. I started working in a world, as you alluded to earlier, but women were very much in the minority, and we were subjected to quite misogynistic attitudes a lot of the time from our colleagues, never mind the people we actually went out to the world to talk to. I remember once when I was in Manchester, we were a very small team, and one of my colleagues was going off to another job. And I was mother of the chapel, which is like the shop steward. And I went and said to the editor, there's this girl who works for us on Saturdays. She does Saturday shifts. She's really, really good. You know she's good. She's always working for us on Saturdays. She gets byline. She's a great journalist. We should give her the job. And my editor looked at me and said, but we've already got a woman.
I can completely echo that. I was one of those who was doing shifts. I started my career on the Yorkshire Evening Post, and so I used to do the shift on the Yorkshire Evening Post, and then I used to drive to Manchester, and I used to do a shift on whichever tabloid would have me. And I shifted for years like that, and then I got told, you've got to wait for one of the other women, there were 2 other women where I worked, to go before you would get a job. So, I mean, you know, and this is in our lifetime.
Yeah, when I went off to Glasgow to work for the Daily Record, there were only 3 women in the newsroom, and we were never allowed to be on shift together because we're women, we'd just sit around and gossip. And men talk about football. That was a very important conversation. So that was the environment, I suppose, was at the back of my mind. And I think in some workplaces, it's still very much the course. We now have some women police officers in senior posts, but there's an awful lot we're still not. We're still at the bottom of the heap who do get treated really badly because they happen to be women. So I suppose when it comes to writing characters, I wanted to write women who I thought could hold their own. And not in an unrealistic way.
So you started off with Lindsay Gordon, who was quite left field heroine, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah.
She was gay, quite different.
In the
yes. And then obviously you had some success with those novels, and then your career suddenly took off. How did you begin to develop that lead heroine character after Lindsay?
After Lindsay, I knew right at the beginning that I didn't just want to write one series. I wanted to write different kinds of books.
Yeah.
And originally, I planned the Lindsay Gordon books as a trilogy.
Yeah.
Because the book I really wanted to write was the 3rd one, and it wasn't a very sophisticated narrative art then. And I figured the only way to get the 3rd one was to write the first 2, and so I did. And then I got to the end of the 3rd one, and I thought, right, I want to do something different now because I want to push myself as a writer to see if I can do something that's very different. Because Lindsay Gordon was a journalist. She's Scottish. There was a lot there in common with my life that I knew what I was writing about. I wanted to write a different kind of character, so I wrote Kate Brannigan, which is a straight private eye set in Manchester. A very different world, a very different style of writing as well. Instead of writing in third person, it's the first person, wisecracking, smart mouth, private eye. And also the challenge of writing a private eye novel is that your detective knows things at the same time as the reader does.
Right.
And you've got to find a way of disguising what's going on, so the reader doesn't get it before the detective does. It's quite a challenging form than the first person private eye novel. So I thought, I wonder if I could do this. Because the other thing that I was nervous about was that Raymond Chandler famously said whenever he was stuck, he'd have a man walk through the door with a gun. even in Manchester in the 1990s, that was a big ask. So I thought I'd have to figure out if it's possible to do this in a different way. And so I started working the Kate Brannigan novels, and that was kind of when I got picked up by a major publisher and got a chance, I suppose, to write full time. I got offered a 2-book deal. And I remember sitting on the train coming back from London, literally on the back of an envelope, working out if I could write 2 books a year, which I thought I probably could do if I wasn't doing anything else. I could pay my mortgage and feed myself. And so I went back home and handed my notice. Yeah. And everybody thought I was mad. Everyone thought I'd completely lost my mind.
But it made you happy. As somebody who watched you during those years, it made you happy.
Yeah, it did. I was doing the one thing that I'd always wanted to do, and I was making a living at it. Not much of a living, but that changed with The Mermaid's Singing, the first Tony Hill and Campbell Jordan book, which won the Gold Dagger for the best crime novel of the year. Yeah. And back then, if you can cast your mind that far back, there was no AI, there was no Google Translate. So foreign publishers had to rely on word of mouth. Almost they had to have somebody whose word they trusted as being, this is a good book, we should translate it. And that wasn't always easy to find. But what they did understand was that if something had won a prize, it was probably a good book. So when I got the Gold Dagger, immediately my foreign sales went right up.
Yeah.
And that was what made the huge difference to me. Germany really was the big difference to me there, in France, in Scandinavia, and in America. America didn't actually translate them, but they did think they had to win a prize.
So you're with a major publisher. Did you ever have to do the book fair where your books went up for auction and they decided whether or not they were going to take you or not, or once you had that settled relationship, you then...
I had a settled relationship here in the UK, and I had very good agents who did all the foreign stuff for me. But I did once get taken to the Frankfurt Book Fair, and honest to God, it was like being led for a cattle fair. A straight, 6 hours. And I've never felt so unworthy in my life. I'm not very spectacular, but honestly, so it's there are times when you do feel like, why am I doing this? It's not. And the other thing that's changed enormously in my writing life has been the rise of festivals like this. When I started out, there really were no book festivals to speak of. There was like Cheltenham and Edinburgh. And when my first book came out, I did 2 events. Also, my first 3 books were paperback originals. And back in the 1980s, papers didn't review paperbacks at all. So my first book was published to a resounding silence. You remember how excited we all were, and nothing happened. But as I went on, book festivals started, and so that gave authors a shop window, if you like, the chance to talk to people about our books, and the chance to show ourselves off, if you like, but also just to have people become aware of us. I think when I was starting out, every now and again you might get a library event where you go along and talk to, on one occasion I did actually talk to 2 men and a guide dog.
And look at you now.
But that was a great day. The people who'd organised the book festival had organised my event at the same time as the literary lunch. So everybody in Wigan who was interested in books had gone to the literary lunch because you got a feed as well. As time's gone on, these festivals have grown and writers have become much closer to our public. We see the people who read our books, and we can talk to the people who read our books. And that's quite nice, really, because you spend most of your time sitting in a room by yourself thinking, this is rubbish. So when you actually are in for people who are here because they want to hear you talk, that's quite a boost to the ego.
Yes.
And that's something that takes time to build.
Yes.
Or it used to take time to build.
Yes. And actually, once you get to know your audience, does that sometimes affect what you do in your writing, or not?
No, I'm afraid not. Don't take this as any kind of insult. But when I'm writing the book I want to write, and it's the book I want to read. If I start listening to people, readers, editors, journalists, whatever, then I'm going to get swayed from my course. I write my best books when I'm in charge, when I'm in control of what I'm doing, and when I'm writing what I want to write. It's funny, I was talking about this with my partner the other day. She said the only time I've seen you be unhappy when you're writing a book is when you're writing a book that they really pushed you into and you didn't really want to do. She said, it's a perfectly good book, no one else would know. Yeah. But I know because I saw you going through that.
Yeah.
So I write the books I want to write, and by and large I've been fortunate enough to have editors who have understood that's the best way to get the work out of me.
So as well as your strong female lead characters, most of your work has a really strong sense of context and a sense of place, doesn't it? So Karen Pirie is set against the background of Scottish independence vote. Tell us a little bit about that and why that's important, because it's a framework, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, not just Karen, not just Scotland, but what I'm writing about is something that feels authentic, feels like it could take place within the world I understand, the world that we know. So I'm very conscious of writing against, I suppose, a social context. And there are things that upset me, that I get angry about, and that tends to be the things that I end up putting in my books one way or another. Because, what is the point in writing a book if you just write something anodyne that says nothing about the world we live in, that doesn't say anything critical about the world we live in? you might as well write for the Bunty. Somebody may remember the Bunty.
I was just going to say, does that still exist?
But I think for me it's important as a writer that I can cast my eye on the world and express what I think about it, and through the voices and minds of my characters. Not everybody I write is somebody who's sitting in the same wheelhouse as me by any manner of means.
Yeah.
I do have characters that I disagree with quite violently about some things, but I think that as a writer of fiction, you have a responsibility to write about the society that you come from. And I think particularly crime fiction, when so much criminality is rooted in social inequality and problems of our society that we have created, it seems willful to ignore that in your writing.
And so Scottish independence obviously very close to your heart. How do you, and obviously you nail your colours to the mast, for those of you who've not read the book yet, you nail your colours to the mast, you're very clear through your characters.
Characters definitely, yes. But not everybody in the book is.
No, indeed they're not. So how do you choose that context? I mean, obviously with Karen it's cold cases, so you can take her back to a place in time, but with your other work, not necessarily.
It's things that interest me. I mean, I think what has always driven me is curiosity. I mean, back from before I was a journalist, even when I was a kid, I was always curious about things. I wanted to know why those things were like that. Why does this happen? Why is the sky blue? All that. And I just wanted to know the answers. And so that's what's driven me forward. When I'm thinking about a book, what I'm going to write next, it's always triggered by something that makes me go, why is that? Or who did that? Or if you turned that on its head, how would it look? So that's what always starts me off. And pretty early on in the process, I'll know if it's a Karen Pirie novel, or if it's Tony Hill, Carol Jordan, or if it's whatever, it's something completely different. And that's what fires me on. And that can come from all sorts of things. It can come from something I've read in the papers, a throwaway line or something somebody says on the radio. Sometimes it's an anecdote someone tells me. With the first Karen Pirie novel, The Echo, for example, that started because I'd gone to dinner with some friends, and their son was a medical student, and he and his friends had been coming back from the pub one Friday night, a bit drunk, and they'd come across a young man being set upon by another gang. So being nice, decent, middle-class boys, they chased away the assailants, and then because they were medics, they went back and looked at the guy on the ground because he was bleeding and he was in a bad way, and that was the point where the police turned up. And fortunately for my friend's son, the guy on the ground was conscious. He was able to explain these were the good Samaritans, not the bad guys. I was thinking, yeah, but what if he'd been unconscious?
Yes.
What if he'd been dead?
Yes.
And that was the starting point for the book that became The Distant Echo. Because I was thinking, well, how would you cope with that if you had that hanging over you and move forward through your life? What difference would it make to you? So it's always going to be a question in the way I'm asking myself with a book.
Yeah.
And with this one, it was about people in positions of power and authority. How do you combat that? How do you make them pay the price for their actions? And the short answer is most of the time you can't. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the things that I try to address with this book. And so going back to 2014 was an interesting time to do it, because the country was really split. You were yes or no. And it wasn't the level of hostility that we had over Brexit. It wasn't like, you never spoke to your friend again because they were on the other side of the argument from you, but it did create schisms and changed your mind about people by the way they argued about these things. And so I thought it was an interesting time to go back to that.
So talking about interesting times, one of my personal favourites is a series which Val has just revealed we might be getting a third instalment of, 1979, 1989 and
1999.
1999.
We're all going to party like it's 1999.
Tell us a little bit about how you arrived at 1979 and starting that.
It kind of happened partly because of lockdown. I was, like many writers, I was struggling during lockdown to know what to write. Because most of my novels, one way or another, have dealt with the background of contemporary times, contemporary issues. But during lockdown, during COVID, you didn't know from one day to the next what was going to be the case. You know, when Nicola Sturgeon stood up every day at that podium, you didn't know what she was going to say. And so there was no firm place to stand, there was no solid ground to stand on and work out from. And I didn't know how I could write about that. And so I thought, I just finished Still Life, a Karen Pirie novel, and I thought, I don't know how to write the next book. And so I thought, well, I'll maybe take my mind back to where I did know what happened, to somewhere that I knew what was going to happen in the world. And as well as that, I was getting a bit of earache from my publisher saying, you should write a memoir, we want you to write a memoir. And I said, I don't want to write a memoir because, like, you know, a lot of people would have to die before I could tell the truth. I don't want to spend that much time gazing at my own navel when I could be gazing at other people's navels, you know. And so I didn't really want to write a memoir, but I thought there must be a way to use my experiences of the world, and I thought the world of words. So I thought if I write 10-year intervals with the same central character, we see how she progresses through her life and through her career, and that would be interesting. So I sat down and I wrote 1979 and then 1989, and then next it's going to be 1999, which is not going to be the same kind of journalist as she used to be.
Yeah.
So there's going to be change and development for Ali,
Right.
And for Rona too. So it's given me the chance to take what I know about my own experiences in journalism, and also tell some of my friends' anecdotes as well. And that's where they came from.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed writing those books because it did take me back into my own history and also reminded me of lots of other people that I've worked with and experienced their work practices. So that was kind of fun to write. So people seem to have liked it.
I think people loved it. So we've left Ali Burns, haven't we, contemplating leaving journalism.
1989 was a tough year.
Yeah.
It was Lockerbie at Christmas time, and then there was the M1 plane crash, and then there was Hillsborough. Who would want to be a journalist after that?
Yeah, and you've spoken very movingly about working during those times, and as women journalists, we often had to go do the first knock, or every time they thought there was a tragedy and they needed a sympathetic face to put up, it was us.
It was us, yeah.
And so you got let into a lot of people's grief.
Yeah. And it was also one of the ways they kind of tested you.
Oh, yes.
My very first day on the Daily Record in Glasgow, I was sent on a quadruple death knock. 4 teenagers who died in a car crash the night before. And I knew that if I did not come back with 4 collect pictures and 4 quotes from the families, I might as well just never come back again.
Yeah.
And that was a difficult day, I think it would be fair to say. But I was determined I was going to not be chucked out the door because these guys thought I wasn't tough enough or clever enough or whatever enough.
Do you think that to survive in those times we had to be more boys than the boys?
Sometimes we did. We had to be more self-contained in many ways.
Yeah.
We had a couple of other friends who were women journalists around the same time, and it was only when we were all together with a bottle of wine that we could actually be honest about what we were going through and what we thought it felt like and what had happened to us on the door. Yeah. I got beaten up by Big Daddy at one point.
Oh yes, I remember that.
And these were the kind of things that we just had to get on with.
Yeah.
Whereas the boys who got beaten up by Big Daddy, they would come back as heroes.
Yes, so those are tough times, and
I learned a lot about myself as well as about the world.
Tell us a bit about that.
No. I learned that I could absorb a lot. I could take the blows.
Yes.
And I could be still standing.
Yeah.
But
you had to be a toughie in that way.
It's the price you pay for that.
Yeah.
You either build a wall between you and people and the world around you, and hide behind it all, and that destroys you in one way, or you take it into yourself and you feel it and you experience those things, and then you just come home and you sort of cry in a glass of wine and get up the next day and do it all again. But it's not easy.
It's not easy.
A lot of times when you know yourself, there are times when you sit there and think, why am I doing this?
Yep.
Do I have to keep doing this? Well, I don't know how to do anything else. I'm unemployable. I've always been unemployable. You know, I mean, I went into journalism not because I thought it was anything to do with writing, but because I went to the careers fair when I was at university, and all the jobs were like, you know, management jobs or personnel or things like that. I thought, I'd do my head in. Because I've got a very low boredom threshold. And I thought, you know, like 2 days into that job, doing the same thing day after day, I'm going to lose my mind. And also, they're also very hierarchical. You know, you have to climb your way up the promotional ladder in the right order.
Yeah.
And I've never been very good with that kind of nonsense. And so it seemed to me that journalism was the only possible thing I could do. Because it wouldn't be the same every day, it would be something different every day.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, it's not actually as hierarchical as people think, journalism. It's always very much a case of who you know, what you've done, who you've worked with,
Yep.
where your next job comes from.
Yep.
And so I thought I could probably manage that.
And in spades. So just coming back to the sense of place, so you're very much, you went home to Scotland, having been around here, Derbyshire, Manchester, whatever, in the northeast for a short amount of time, and then you went home to Scotland. Is that it settled now?
Yes. Yeah, I always wanted to go back, but for various reasons I was kind of stuck with staying in the northwest and the northeast because I had a son, and so I had to share custody of my son, and in order to spend time with him, watch him growing up and be there for him, I needed to be geographically within sort of easy grabbing distance, as it were. And it was only really when he had grown up to the point where he didn't need me to be giving him his tea 3 days a week, that I could go back to Scotland, which is where my heart had always been. And I wanted to go back because that's where home is, really. But I also knew that I had to, I wanted to go back as someone who was established in their world.
Yeah.
I didn't want people making judgments about who the person was that they went to school with or who the person was that their brother knew or anything like that. I wanted to come back as my own person in my own right. So that was important to me. And that's been, I mean, it's been great. It's been fantastic. I never want to move away again. Because it's where my heart still is.
Yes.
And it's where my roots still are.
And mostly you write about Scotland
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Do you ever envisage kind of writing? I know you've got a project coming up with your partner Joe, which we were talking about earlier, which is set in South America via Scotland.
Yes. Yes. A sense of place is very important to me. I think a sense of place is an important element in a crime novel because it's the thing that roots you in the story. If you can show the backdrop against which this is happening, it's all much more credible. If it's just happening in sort of void, as it were, or some makey-uppy place, it doesn't have the same impact. And when I wrote the Tony Hill and Carol Jordan novels, the first one I wrote, The Mermaid Singing, was not intended as the start of the series. It was intended as a standalone. And so I put it in a fictitious city because I knew I was going to be really rude about the police. And I was living in Manchester at the time.
Yes.
James Anderson was the chief constable.
Yes.
Yeah, need I say more? I knew that if I put it in Manchester, every time I drove the car out, the driver would get nicked for something. So I had to make it a fictitious city. And then I was stuck with that. And although it was very practical in many ways, because I could put anything I wanted into Bradfield, I need a Premiership football club, I'll just put one down there.
Yes.
It felt like a stage set to me. It never felt solid to me in the way that other places.
It's interesting because, I mean, as a reader, I took from that all the places that you had dropped a pin in the north. I mean, there was quite a lot that was quite solid and grabbable onto it because you knew that you had experienced it.
Yeah, and so I used bits of Leeds, bits of Sheffield, bits of Bradford, and bits of Manchester, quite a lot of Manchester.
Yeah.
But it was never any one of those. You couldn't say this is Manchester or this is wherever.
Yeah.
Because that was I had to have this sort of fictional place and a fictional police force and things. Mm-hmm. But I've always preferred to write something that's set against a real background, whether it's the north of Scotland, whether it's wherever. And I've set books partly in other places. I mean, Skeleton Road is set in the former Yugoslavia, partly.
Yeah.
And even this one, Silent Bones, would have bits of that in Germany. And,
Yes.
so I do set bits of it other places, but the heart of the book is, I think, places that I really know, and I feel I can write about with a degree of certainty. And I think it's one of the tricks we play as crime writers on the readers, is that if I write about a place that you know and you recognise and you've been to, and you think, oh, I know that pub, or I've been down that street, you immediately believe everything else I'm telling you. So I can tell you all sorts of lies, but you're on my side because you recognise that cafe.
Does this mean that Carol Jordan and Tony Hall will not make a reappearance?
I don't know. I mean, I never say never. And I think that one of the things that I find quite interesting about writing the Nine series is that that takes place in my universe.
Yes.
This is my world.
Yeah.
And 1999, my books are out there, so my characters are out there walking those streets. So, you know, who knows who's going to turn up in
Yes.
99 and 2009 and 2019.
Yeah.
I'll finish it in 2019 because that's the last year of normal life. And it's also by that time, Ali's going to be like, you know, knocking on for 60ish.
Yeah, but we're all still working.
We're all still working, yeah. You know, she's, I'm not sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure about that. Other people say to me, you should go further into the future. I don't really want to write a futuristic crime novel because things are changing so much, so fast in the world of investigation. I mean, it's quite terrifying. Yesterday in London, the police were using live facial recognition on those marches, and this is a technology we know to be flawed, and that's out there being used, and other technologies that are out there being used that are questionable. The way that AI is being used is very questionable.
But you have really trusted police sources who will keep you up to date with all this.
Well, most trusted forensic science sources.
Yes, well, yes.
And that's. I mean, the first time DNA was used in a courtroom was 1986, and my first book came out in 1987. So I kind of feel that I've gone in lockstep with technology and forensic science, because I've got a lot of forensic science colleagues and friends who've shared lots of their experiences with me. Some of it I wish they hadn't. I mean, they've been extraordinarily helpful. And, you know, Lady Black, or Sue Black, as many of you may know from her books, her appearances on television and things. I mean, Sue and I have been pals now since the 1990s, and I owe a lot to her and to her colleague Niamh Kildade, but also to others. But sometimes they tell me too much. Sue told me this a few years ago. She was talking about anatomy, which was her first love, and she said, recently we've realised that there's a tiny bone in the ear. It's so small that anatomists didn't count it, but it's the only bone in your body that doesn't change. The cells in your body replace themselves roughly every 7 years, but there's this tiny bone in your ear that doesn't change from the womb to the tomb. I said, well, that's interesting. She says, yeah, what it tells you, if you analyse it, is where your mother was living when she was pregnant with you. Exactly, that was exactly.
There you go, you learn something every day.
So I didn't see how I could use it in practical terms in the plot, but I thought I'd just drop it in as a little tidbit in the next book, which I did. And next thing, she was on the phone saying, you might have waited till I published the paper. She should know better than to tell me things.
Let's just move away from the very successful crime novels for a moment, because you basically set, if you like, books that then become trilogies, that then become formats, whatever. But you also, I'm just going to hold this up, because I don't know how many of you are aware that Val has published this recently. It's called Winter, and it's the most beautiful little book.
Yes, it's very beautiful.
And it's, I can show you.
I didn't draw the pictures.
Illustrated pictures, lovely, but I want you to talk a little bit about the freedom you had to write this, because obviously you now set your own formats and parameters for Karen Pirie, for example, but this, you had complete freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm now in a very fortunate position after publishing as many books as I have and having had the success I've had, that publishers come to me with ideas for things I might like to do. Mostly I say, no, I don't want to do that. But this was a publisher I'd worked with previously, and she wanted me to write a monograph about winter. And she'd read somewhere that winter was my favourite season, and she's editing a series of seasons. Michael Moore-Purgo did spring, I've done winter, Bernard Everest was doing summer, and Kate Moss is doing autumn. And I said, what do they say about winter? She said, well, whatever you want. I said, you've got a completely blank canvas, you can deal with this any way you want. winter in fiction, winter in your own life, winter in how you feel about it. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting, and it's not a huge number of words. I can do that. And so I went away and thought about it, and what I came up with really was the idea of winter being the season of festivals that are very democratic. You know, sometimes the big festivals like Glastonbury, but face it, they cost a lot of money. You've got to have to take money for the tickets, you've got to have the money to go camping, you've got to have money to support yourself, you've got to be prepared to put all the terrible food in bad toilets. But in winter we have lots of festivals that are pretty democratic, pretty open. Halloween, bonfire night, hog grenade. These are things that people take in their stride, they're part of their year. And so I thought, oh, I'll do that, and I can go back into my own past and into the present. And so that's what I chose to do. It really was an interesting thing to write, because it allowed me to go into things in my own past, not memoir. I'm not writing a memoir, I'm just telling you what happened. And some of the very fond memories I have of the season, and family stories, family events, and little things like keystones in my life, like the world is divided into two groups of people. People who like soup as a meal and people who are wrong. So things like that. And I was able to write about my childhood memories of winter. And I don't think I was doing it sentimentally. I think there was much sentiment there. I was just telling it like it was.
Yeah, but it's also an interesting glimpse into your life without it intruding.
Yeah.
So, hot chocolate and, the way you make coffee and what you like, soup.
Soup.
And things
important.
like that.
And things that we've kind of lost. Like when I was a kid, Halloween was guising, and you got dressed up and you went out, you chapped on people's doors, and you had to do a turn. Remember this trick or treat? You actually had to earn your treat. And I have some great memories of guising, and it was also about raiding the cupboard to see what was in the cupboard that was about to be thrown out. One year I found an old curtain. It was a sort of bright burnt orange curtain, and I knew that I had a sombrero that I got put as a thing at a Christmas party. It's a proper big cardboard sombrero. And at that time, Speedy Gonzales was in the charts. So I got a belt from my curtain, got one to cut a hole in it, and it wasn't just la 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 la, and it was great. I mean, it was you took what was there, because you couldn't go to the shop and buy a witch's outfit, because they didn't have them in the shop, even if you could have afforded it. So it was you took whatever there was, and you made something of it, and it was great, because you know what, you went out, 3 or 4 of you would go out together, and it was good fun. And same with bonfire night, you didn't put all these sort of big municipal bonfires. You went around somebody's back garden, and somebody's garden was big enough to have a bonfire, and you brought your fireworks along and let them off. We used to have our own wee fireworks display in the back garden, but we gave that up after my dad tripped over the box and dropped the taper. It was great while it lasted. It didn't last very long. So the things about that for me were sort of hallmarks, bookmarks of winter that I was able to write about. And I really like this chance to go off-piste, as my publicist calls it.
Yes, that's what I was going to...
Side gigs.
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, they're not side gigs, are they? But going off-piste to give you an extra sense of freedom.
Yes, it does. It's often things that I wouldn't have thought about. I wouldn't have thought about writing a book about winter. I wouldn't have thought about writing a book about Queen Macbeth.
Yes.
So those were all things that dropped into my lap. And I said plenty of things I say no to. I have to say, people stop me in the street quite often because I'm quite recognisable, I think, and I say, wee fat Scottish with my white hair, it's either me or Liz Lockhead. And it's the one book that people come up to me and they say, Val McDermid, talk about the books, and generally say really nice things, because why would you stop somebody in the street to be mean to them, So the one time that someone has actually stopped me in the street to be mean to me was after I'd reworked Northanger Abbey, which was very well received, well reviewed, lots of people liked it. But there was one woman who I'd noticed in Edinburgh, she used to sit and read crime fiction in the park, so I thought she was probably a civilised person. I'm walking down the street one day, we were actually on our way to the bin, so very black bin bags, and she stopped me and said, I really don't know why you did Northanger Abbey. I was like, I didn't like it at all. I don't know why you did it. I said, well, I thought it was a challenge, really. I said, well, it was a challenge you should have said no to. What's she meant? Every now and again.
You'll use that one day.
Not if she sees me first.
So just give us a perspective on kind of the writing process and the year and the... So just again, going back to Karen Pirie, do you always know the ending when you begin?
Yeah, I kind of know I know who's done what to whom and why.
Yes.
But I don't know much about what happens in the middle.
Right.
I used to plan things out very carefully, because when I started, I thought plotting was my least successful skill. So I would work out chapter by chapter what I was going to do, then write that out as a story. And often along the way I think of something better to do to achieve the object. And I knew what I was going back to on the story spikes that was there in front of me. But after about a dozen novels, that just stopped working for me. So unfortunately, it stopped working for me in the middle of the novel. And I had to basically run away and try and finish it against the clock. It's that Scottish Presbyterianism, they give you the money, you better give them a book. And so that was a bit frantic. I mean, I ended up writing 65,000 words in 9 days, which is ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
And I sent it off to my publisher, and my editor came back to me and said, Judah, that's the best first draft you've written. And I'm like, oh no, it's not going to be from that one. But I kind of got the hang of it and relaxed a bit more about it, and I think I kind of figured out how to do it by that point, the bare bones of how to put a story together. And that's how I start. I mean, I know what the book's about. I probably know 2 or 3 turning points along the way.
Yeah.
I know where I want to end up. E.L. Doctorow calls it driving at night writing. You know where you're starting from, but all you can see is the bit of road in front of you and the headlights, and you know where you're aiming for, and hopefully you get to where you're aiming for, or as near as makes no difference.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the attitude I take now. I used to have, until the last couple of years, I had a fairly rigid set of practices. I would start the novel at the beginning of January, and I'd finish it sometime in March or April. And then we'd do the rises and that, and then it would come out in the autumn. And then I inconveniently had a couple of major surgeries, which kind of derailed the timetable a bit. So now I'm kind of slightly adrift about starting and finishing, but I know I have to get it finished by the time that's in the contract. And that's kind of how it is. I don't have a set number of words a day. I don't have a set number of hours a day. When I'm in the writing phase, the first thing I do is revise what I did the day before to get me into the right place. And then I will write in 25-minute chunks. I'll write for a bit, go and get a cup of coffee, or go to the post office, or go for a wee walk around the garden or whatever, answer some emails, come back, do some more. And the day goes through that in 20-minute chunks, really, until it's not really working anymore, and then I'll knock off. And that seems to work pretty well. And I take about somewhere between 3 and 4 months to write the first draft.
Which is pretty fast.
Well, it's I suppose so. But if you're going to write a book a year, that's kind of the pace you've got.
Set your... Yes, I'm getting signalled to... We have a small amount of time. I think we have a roving mic, do we?
Yes.
Would anybody like to ask Val a question?
There's a couple of people.
There's a lady there with the glasses.
Not shy in Yorkshire.
No.
This was a version I never have worked in the police with. Now that you're retiring her career, can you bring that another female higher police person who is female, good at the job, not corrupt, and works with other people? Because that people can do TV series, that's the plot, so that you can reinstate it.
That's your next challenge.
I don't know, I mean, the Karen Pirie's had an unfortunate boss.
Yes.
It was not a very cooperative or sisterly, but I mean, I don't set out to be hostile. Karen is very supportive of her junior colleagues. I mean, you know, she works with Daisy very closely. She's done wonders with the Mint. No, I'm just I can't take any responsibility for what my colleagues do. Terrible bunch.
Who else had their hand up? Okay, there's another lady down here with a hat, and then we'll go to the other side of the room.
It's been absolutely fascinating. It's been so funny as well. And what's really clear to me is that you really care about authenticity, you care about poverty, inequality, you understand the roots of violence come from that, and you also understand very much about misogyny. And I guess I didn't realise, I've been a social worker for 42 years, and I never realised until you both talking about knocking on doors for tragic events, how similar our roles have perhaps actually been. So I actually want your advice today, because I've written a book, finally, having no time from social work, about the 80s, about the misogyny, if you like, about what happened to women, sex workers, drug users during the AIDS crisis, a kind of train spotting built with more authentic, rounded voices for women. Where would you go with a book like that to get an agent? Because you clearly had some issues getting agents with less traditional characters and leads. Where would you go about getting an agent for a book like that?
I would say look at who is writing books in a similar vein and talk to them about who their agent is. And that's the only thing I can say is ask people whose work is broadly in that area, who agents for them, because they're already obviously going to be open to that kind of thing.
Okay, there isn't actually anything, you know.
But there's a lot of writers, particularly in the North now, who are doing really interesting stuff. And if you look at what they're doing, it's ask them who their agents are. You'll come to an event like this, ask them who their agents are, they'll tell you.
Okay, all right.
On this side of the room, anybody got a question?
House.
That's right at the back. Keep going. Keep your hand up, please.
When you're not writing, what do you like reading yourself?
I read quite widely. I read a lot of fiction, not just crime fiction. And I've been fortunate enough in recent years to be a judge at a few prizes. The great advantage of that is it's put people in front of me with books I hadn't read before and discovering for the first time. And that's been really exciting. I was judge on the Gordon Byrne Prize this year, and I read some fantastic books by people I'd not heard of before, not read before. And the result of a winner called Endley, which was by Maria Reva, which is set against the backdrop of the Ukraine war, but it's not a novel about war. And also Sarah Law's Helen, which is a book about wind. A wind, I say, not unoffensive wind. But there was a lot of good books on that long list and the short list. One was called A Room Above a Shop, which is set in the 1980s in South Wales. An excellent moving explanation of working class life then. So I think one of the things that I'm very conscious of is looking at long lists and short lists for other things that are outside my wheelhouse that make me go and read things that extend my reading experience. So there are certainly the crime writers obviously that I as soon as a new one comes out, I grab it. People like Meg Herring and Ellie Griffiths. But it's not just crime writers that I'm interested in. I'm interested in anyone who writes well, who tells a good story.
Final question here, please.
Where do you like to go on holiday, and do you have a favourite Scottish island?
Where do I like to go on holiday? What's a holiday? I like to go to Europe. I like to go to Italy. I like to go to France. I like to go to Spain. My favourite Scottish island, that's a difficult question because there are different things to like about them. Islay, obviously, for the whisky. I like Colonsay because it's really quiet. There's like 140 people who actually live there all year round. got beautiful beaches, but probably I'd say Harris, because it's just breathtakingly lovely. My partner likes gin and I don't, so Harris gin is probably the one for her. But it's a beautiful place. And if you're interested in Harris at all, I would recommend Douglas Stewart's new novel, John of John, which is set on Harris, and it's very beautifully about what it's like, but also about the difficulties of island life as well.
Just to round up, what have we got to look forward to?
I don't know what you've got to look forward to.
So we know we've got 1999
1999.
coming.
I've got a book that my partner and I co-wrote called This Door of the Seas, which is coming out at the beginning of August, and that's about the Darien project. I'm not going to start telling you all about that, but it's a really interesting bit of Scottish history that we're shining a new light on. And I've got something else that's knocking at the door of my head, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
And then Karen Pirie, will she
And then
come
the
back?
new Karen Pirie after 99.
Will you let her succeed in love this time?
I don't know. She's got very high standards, you know. It's not easy finding love when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, is it? I can remember that far back. You can remember me that far back.
I can remember you that far back. Can I just say a massive thank you to Val for sharing things with us. Please put your hands together. Val McDermid.